Now let's start this section by exploring error messages. And at the moment, this app has no error. But we can force one. For this, I'll go to the goal input.js file, and in there, I will simply force an error by actually setting this image source not to the correct source. I will comment this out. Instead, I will set the source to just a string, some path to image. Now, this path doesn't exist, but this doesn't matter because that's also not a good way of defining such a path. If I save this, we now get an error here when we have a look at our emulators at the bottom, and we also get one here in the terminal. And the error message we're getting here is that we provided an invalid prop, to be precise that the source prop is the problem, to the image, and that it expected one of type number. Now, I will be honest, this last part is a bit confusing, and you will often have confusing elements in error messages. They are not perfect. But what is important is that you read the message, because often it gives you a first hint at what's wrong and what could be the problem. Here, the hint is relatively clear that it is related to the source prop of the image component, but even if it's a bit more abstract, you might at least get a first idea of where to look for the problem and where you could maybe fix it. Now, in addition, what's also very useful when getting error messages is this stack trace down here. This tells you where the error occurred. The first line isn't too useful because here it points at an image component in some weird path, because that in the end is the bundled code to which it's pointing here, and that's not helping us too much. But if you have a look at the part down here, it becomes more useful. Here we learn that it's in the goal input component, which is created by the app component. This can be useful if you have the same component being used in multiple components, then you know which instance being used by which other component is causing this. And therefore now it's pretty clear that we should dive into the goal input component, and that in there we might want to look for the usage of the image component and then take a closer look at the source prop. And if we're not sure of what should be provided here, then of course it's always a good idea to look into the official documentation. If you search for a React Native image, you should get a direct link to the official documentation for this image component, but you can also just go to the React Native main page and then to components and then find the image there. And here you then learn more about the usage of this component and which kind of value can be passed to the source prop. Now here we forced this error, of course, so it is rather simple to fix, but I wanted to show you what you can make of such error messages. And before I save this fixed code, let's also have a closer look at the emulator again. There we also got an error message at the bottom here. And you will sometimes get warnings or error messages down here, and you can click on them to see more details. Indeed, you see that here it's actually not an error, but a warning, which means, yeah, the app still runs, but not as intended. In this case, no image would be displayed. And you get a similar output as before. You get basically the same error or warning message up here. And then you got a stack trace down here, though I will say that this output here is not that useful compared to what we had here in the terminal. Here in the terminal, it was pretty clear pretty quickly which component, the image component, in which component built by us causes the problem. Here it's not immediately clear. Nonetheless, taking a look at this output can also be helpful. At least here we also learn that it is related to an image. Now with that, I will of course save the fixed code, and with that the apps update and the error goes away.